buckets. From around the world to your backyard.
ZUZU Radio.
All right, welcome to ZUZU Radio. I'm your host, Bran, and I'm here with...
Chelsea.
Chelsea, thank you for being here. We've gotten to know each other through the years, through a lot of different creative projects, and most recently we developed a trilogy of music videos for your band Stress Dolls. And I expect that normally when you're going around doing interviews like this, you're talking about your music, right? But today I wanted to dig into a little different territory and learn more about how you're supporting artists locally. So I guess the obvious place to start is, how did you develop your radio DJ voice?
Oh my goodness. Let's see. So rewinding way back in time when I was going to college at Fredonia, I entered into my freshman year undeclared, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And by the encouragement of my parents, they were saying, why don't you look into communications? Because I did consider being a music major, and I actually took a classical guitar course. But I ultimately felt like that might almost ruin my passion for music, just from talking to other people who were music majors and how extensively you had to practice, how much you had to put into it, and how it kind of deconstructed music into a very mathematical type thing, which I respect in a lot of ways now, especially having done it for a while. But at that point in my life, music was such an emotional thing for me, and I didn't want that to be sabotaged.
Sure.
So by, like I said, the recommendation of my parents, I looked into the communications major, and I found that they had an audio radio track. And I figured, well, that still has to do with music. I'm interested in music. Let's do that. When I started in audio radio, taking the courses and everything, you're doing edits and all that with Adobe, but there's also WCVF, the Fredonia radio station. And when I first became involved, I was just an assistant music director. But it might have been my sophomore year, I started dabbling in the on-air stuff. I was actually invited to do it by a friend of mine. I didn't pursue it at all myself, but she already had a radio show and her co-host had dropped out. So she asked, do you want to do it? I was like, yeah, sure. Those early days of radio were probably horrific. I have no recordings of them now. I can only imagine they would sound terrible. But as I became more comfortable at the radio station, got to know people on the board, I became more involved. And by my senior year, I was program director of WCVF. And I also was the host of a program called High Noon Friday, which is still on the air, as well as one that I created called The Local Lowdown. And that was kind of the first time I felt, I think, a true passion for radio and what it could bring to a community and how it could serve artists, and was doing that show. I only had the show for a semester. After that, I was graduating, so I gave it off to a freshman, and Lexi Zaccardi, who actually now currently works for 103.3 The Edge. But she was the one who kind of made sure it kept going, and it still exists to this day. But as far as developing a radio voice, I think I just kind of had a deeper voice my whole life. And as a child, I actually detested it because I was, kind of poked fun of by my brother and stuff. It was like, oh, you sound like a boy. And I felt very insecure about it for a long time. But funnily enough, as soon as I'm then majoring in radio, I had professors telling me, you actually have a very nice voice for radio. You could potentially pursue a career in this path. That said, I mean, radio as a career now is not exactly what it used to be 30 years ago.
Yeah,
I think people,
different.
Exactly, you used to be able to become an on-air personality, and it's like, wow, this is my full-time gig. Like, I'm living large. No, not the same story anymore. But I think you just, as you go along with it, because then after graduating, I got a job on the air at Alternative Buffalo, and, currently now working for Buffalo Toronto Public Media with WBFO The Bridge. I think you just kind of learn as you go how to ease into whatever it is that's your quote unquote personality. I've never wanted to sound too far divorced from who I am naturally.
Right.
You hear certain radio jocks and they're really kind of putting on a flair, like a show. And that depends on the market too. If you listen to like sports talk radio.
Yeah.
Or
those guys.
Right. Yeah. Or like the top 40 DJs who are very like animated out there. And actually, I worked at KISS for a few shifts early on, doing like fill-in shifts. And it was funny because they really encourage you to be over the top. And so, you're really like going into the breaks strong, like,
Sure,
"Ah!" And that's not exactly my personality per se. But I don't know. It's just kind of, I'd say like my radio voice is still my voice. It's just that I try and take it a little slower. You want to enunciate clearly, especially when you're doing the regional music show for these artists and these bands. I don't want it to be misheard what I'm saying, because I'm hoping that people are looking up these artists later. And so they know what I'm, so I have to be careful, because sometimes I do have the tendency to talk quick and have my words run together a little bit.
So yeah, for the local talent, it's important to create space and create the right pace and everything. I'm also curious, there's a lot of data out there that says the best voice to use in any sort of confrontation is the late night radio DJ voice. It's like scientifically proven that when you use that register of your voice in discussion or argument, it has a tendency to sort of wind the other person down. Do you ever use this superpower in your real life?
To de-escalate things?
Yeah.
I can say that in my real life, usually when it comes to, not that I argue very often, but when I have,
I can't imagine it.
I usually get a little too heated and passionate, and I tend to raise my voice. I've been trying to be very, not like I'm yelling, but I definitely get, irritated.
Sure.
For many different reasons. I've tried to be more conscious of that because A, you don't want to hurt your voice, which you can easily do.
Yeah.
But B, I also don't want to be the kind of person that's getting very irritated. I want to be able to de-escalate something and think it through and be thorough. And I think I've kind of come to a place where sometimes in a heated moment, I almost have to step back and like take a second.
Yeah.
And then continue the conversation in a more civil way that's not just a heated, emotional reaction.
Yeah, that's a great skill. The reason I know about this data is because I was reading a book by an FBI hostage negotiator. He was talking about using this voice, and he's dealing with like terrorists and things, and I'm just imagining your voice like going through the phone and everything calming down, So it's just funny to hear you kind of reflect on that. But one thing I want to go back to is the Fredonia radio show. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned that you were, you only had a semester left and you had to pass the show off to someone else. Was it difficult for you to say goodbye to this thing that kind of brought you into radio, and something that you also spent time developing and sort of, as I understand it, bringing it back from the dead in a way, because it had existed and then it sort of died off, and then you were the one that helped push it back, right? Is that how it went?
So local music had been part of the programming at Fredonia, but it hadn't been updated in years. And what the local show that Fredonia was airing at the time was simulcasting the WBNY local show.
Oh,
so
right.
the local lowdown was its own idea in a way. I mean, obviously there are many local music shows. It's not like it was a really unique idea, but the name and everything was something that originated at that point in time. And yeah, it was... I had it for such a short time, and I was feeling so excited about it, and I had lots of thoughts about where it could go and the direction it could go, but also you're graduating, and there's a whole other world out there. And so, yeah, it was melancholy, but I also felt like I was glad that it was going to continue in some way, and then I really lucked out, because essentially after graduation, I got to do the exact same thing on a much larger scale on Alternative Buffalo on commercial radio, which was a dream come true. I mean, it was basically taking the exact same format of that show and then turning it into a job in my adult life.
Yeah, success.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Were the people that were running that show familiar with your work on Fredonia, and did that sort of open a door for you, or did it just was totally fateful that you fell into this?
It was kind of fate. What was happening was, at the time I was at Entercom, which is now Odyssey, but at the time it was Entercom Communications, and they do have WGR, they have KISS, they have Star, WBEN, all those major stations. And 107.7, that frequency had at one time been the Lake, which a lot of people have very fond memories of the Lake. And I think the Lake did used to have local music in its programming to an extent. But then the Lake dropped off, and it just became a simulcast station for WBEN, because WBEN is on the AM dial. So this was the FM frequency.
I see.
For the news station. Right around that time, I got a job as a full-time producer, as well as being a part-time fill-in jock and traffic reporter. So I was kind of all over the place, just bopping around. And then they gave word that they were going to turn 107.7 into an alternative station. So obviously I was very interested. I mean, this is only like a few months into me being there at all. As soon as they hired a program director, which I tried to interview for program director, which makes me kind of giggle now because I was, like 22 years old. I mean, there's no way you could be a PD at that point. But they hired a program director out of Rochester, Nick Rivers, and I made a meeting with him, and I put out my idea where I said I really love the local music scene. I would love to do a local music show. And he coincidentally had been thinking the same thing, where he was like, I do want us to have a local music program. So he was like, well, why don't you come up with a name and we'll have you on Sunday nights and you can just kind of have free reign and whatever. So I was like, wow, this is the most ideal situation I could probably dream of. So that's how Localized came to be.
Wow. And so where did you develop this sense for supporting local music? Because I think we'll dig into this as we go on, but you're an artist yourself, and that takes a lot of energy. And then to have a drive to support the people in the community around you, was there someone that you saw or people that you followed that you were really interested in and sort of awoke that spirit inside you?
Well, while at Fredonia, there were definitely some bands that I got into. I was in a band during my time in Fredonia, but we didn't play too many shows. But through that band, I became friendly more with other musicians and people who were really into music. Because I've always kind of had a friend group of people where we're not all musically inclined, which I like. You know, I love like learning about other things that my friends are interested in. But that opened the door to me also learning about bands who were active in Buffalo at the time. So like Failures Union.
Oh, yeah.
Arctic Death.
Oh, yeah. Throwback.
And I loved Lemuria, which I know that you know.
Yes.
So they were a big one for me. But through that, like just knowing like, wow, these bands I'm a huge fan of in Buffalo. And then doing the local lowdown, I invited some other people onto the program. And I remember specifically Savannah King, who I don't know if you ever have heard of her. She hasn't been active in a little while, but singer-songwriter, kind of a folky Joni Mitchell type vibe. She came on the program and she played this original song. I want to say it was called Sweet. And I just remember, like, I still have a vivid recollection of being in the booth, like watching her perform, listening to the song. And it was like, it just hit me. This is so good. I don't know how else to describe it. It was like this light bulb, really like passionate moment of like, how is this so good? And like, it's local, you know, like, because I know I've talked about this now quite a few times with various people. It's like the local has a kind of a pejorative thing associated with it.
Yeah. And
at the end of the day, a lot of these artists could be, I mean, the recordings are good enough. The songwriting's good enough. I mean, it's not like you're on a smaller scale. You could, I think any of these, you know, some of these bands could go way further.
Sure.
You know, people would like it outside of Western New York. But yeah, I don't know. It just kind of lit a fire in me of realizing like, this is so cool. And I think too, yes, I'm an artist. And I've always loved to write songs since I was a kid, but I was really insecure. I was so not confident. And like many people, you know, I had various points in my life where I was like made fun of and made to feel kind of small. Mm-hmm. And just, I don't know. I think it's really important to encourage people and let them know that their art matters. Because at the end of the day, if it's doing something for you inside, no matter like how big it gets, how many people hear it, whatever. I mean, like, I still believe it matters.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is answering your question, but I guess just trying to hone in on.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's something in the idea that when it's a local artist performing and they're really outstanding, there's this sense of maybe camaraderie with them, or a little bit of like, not ownership of them, but just like, hey, we're here together in the same city. Like, nobody knows you. This whole like keep Buffalo a secret thing, which I don't love that phrase, but the idea behind it, when you see someone so talented that's being vulnerable in front of you, you know, sharing a part of themselves, And that part that they're sharing, they've obviously put a lot of work into making great, and it's just a powerful moment to experience that, knowing that in the back of your mind, like, everyone should hear this. This is so good, everyone should hear this. And it creates some of that energy I think you're talking about.
For sure.
Yeah. And, what you said there is interesting to me about how growing up and maybe at the beginning of music, there were times where it felt like, I don't know if I have the confidence to really do this. And I'm curious, are there certain moments or certain guides perhaps that help you get over that hump? Because a lot of artists go through that imposter syndrome and they look at other people who are playing their instrument better than they are and think, I should just give this up. There's a lot of that mentality.
Yeah.
How did you sort of get around that whole thing?
It took a long time. My first memory of feeling more confident, I suppose, was, like I said, I started playing guitar when I was 14. For my 14th birthday, my dad got me an acoustic electric Ibanez.
All right.
And which was so sweet. And so I was coming home every day after school in 8th grade and just playing that guitar from like the moment my homework was done. It was like guitar was on me from that point until bed. And like, I'd be watching TV while playing the guitar. I'm on the computer while playing the guitar. I was just obsessed, totally obsessed. But with singing, I loved to sing, but I wanted no one to hear me sing. It was like I would sing in the basement, like quietly. So I thought, obviously like, my parents were hearing me, like, other people in the house were hearing me. But in my mind, it was like, if I couldn't be seen, then no one could hear it. Right.
Yeah.
So in high school, there was like an open mic night I performed at. I didn't sing. I did an instrumental version of a Panic at the Disco song because I was like, I just want to perform. So that kind of ripped off the Band-Aid of like at least performing guitar in front of people. And then there was a larger event for the whole student body that was actually, because that open mic night was like a nighttime thing that you had to go back to the school for. This was like a thing that was held during the day that you could sign up for. It was like some sort of like talent thing or whatever. It wasn't a competition, but it was like, I honestly can't remember.
Just like a showcase of some kind?
Exactly, just kind of like a showcase. And so I had one other friend who played guitar, and we were actually the first 2 guitar players in the ensemble in our school, which was really fun. But she and I loved Paramore. And at the time, the song Misery Business was huge. So this is probably like, 2006 or something? And so we decided we were going to enter into this showcase and play Misery Business. And I had the little guitar solo, which is not that complex, right? But we played this song. We didn't really sing it. We had the school kind of sing it with us because everyone knew it. It was so popular.
Yeah.
But I remember like after that performance that day, I had people coming up to me in the halls and being like, oh my God, that was so cool. Like whatever. And then there were people who would then refer, it's like, oh, Chelsea's like a musician. Like she's a guitar player. And it sounds, but for me as that really insecure, not confident kid who like all I ever wanted was to be seen as a musician, like that's all I had wanted. And to be seen that way definitely made me feel more comfortable in my own skin and like, okay, maybe this is something I could do without being embarrassed. But it really wasn't until college that I actually started like actively singing in front of people.
Yeah.
That was a hard one for me to get past.
This all seems to speak to the idea of your own support for artists who are brave enough to take that step and also reinforcing their understanding of the identity they're sort of trying on. It's like, you're good enough to be valued, right? And sort of like paying it forward, what you experienced in high school, sort of sharing that along. It seems that's such important work in the scene. A lot of times in my class, I tell my students, if you find an artist that you like, compliment them. Because that is how you build community with the people around you. And it's so rare that people take the step to kind of DM or just pull someone aside and say, hey, that was really good. Yeah. And a lot of artists are sitting there going like, was it any good? They're in their own mind like,
it's true.
I don't know, I can't be objective about it. So yeah, that's really interesting. And just, it speaks to your story. And I guess it also kind of segues into this next question, which is like, what is the hardest part about making a great local show as you're sort of considering who to include and how to build that program?
The hardest part? Well, I luck out because a lot of the people who submit have very good music. And, on rare occasion, perhaps the recording quality, for example, isn't quite to the, and I mean, that's just, unfortunately, when you're going to put something on the radio airwaves, when it transfers over, if the recording quality is poor, and when I say that, I mean like somebody who's just putting a microphone in the middle of a room and then just kind of playing haphazardly. And there are times where like the song actually isn't bad, and I will be honest and I'll contact the artist and be like, listen, I'm sorry, just the recording quality isn't quite up to the standard, but like
air.
Right, but if you record something in the future that has maybe a little bit more of a professional setup, and when I say that, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to go into some like thousands of dollars studio or something, but just something that's a little cleaner where like it's clear, it's like, then please resubmit. And I've had artists do that, so I'd say like it's always kind of tough to have that exchange, because like we're saying, like people are being really vulnerable, and you don't want to be like crushing them, you know what I mean? Like it's like you want to be able to acknowledge, like, keep going, because like obviously we all grow and change, and like no matter where you're at right now in your creative pursuit, I mean, it could develop exponentially in the months or years to come. So I think it's just kind of the hardest part, I suppose, is trying to figure out like what's going to, I think on a week-to-week basis, just like what's going to work well for that particular playlist and like how it flows. And I really kind of like to have a flow to the playlist, like I like to have some uppers, some not downers, but some like, kind of like a little more relaxed, then maybe picking it back up again, whatever. And so like, and I also, though, I try to work with people's release schedules, as well as like working with when people are going to be playing shows. And so just trying to factor everything together to make like every week the best program it can be, and the one that really, I feel like at least services people in the way that the artists are hoping to be serviced in the area.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's actually, it kind of brings to mind something you did recently. I think you kind of did more of a historical focus, where you had gone through your basement and pulled up all the local CDs you had, and maybe it was for 716 Day?
It was.
And you had gone through some of these former bands, that have come and gone, and kind of gave them a spotlight again. It's really amazing to consider how much history there is in this city of music that pre-technology is just gone. And now post-technology, it's important to revisit those things rather than to just be what's new.
Yeah.
And so, it was really fun to see you dig through the crate and pull some of that stuff out. Was there anything that you totally forgot about? You're like, oh my God, I have this?
Yeah, there were. I think there were bands where I was looking into it and it was spurring my memory of other bands too that were on around that time. Because a lot of those CDs were from around like 2014, 2015, 2016. And in those years, that's when I was still, because very long story short now, with like health issues and whatever over time, like, I stopped drinking. I wasn't really going out as much, like feeling ill, whatever. But like at that point in my life, I was still going out pretty frequently. And so my boyfriend Tyler and I were like out all the time, and so we were like, it was fun because we were exchanging memories about like, oh my God, like remember like the Naturalists were a band that I loved, and I actually messaged Craig Perno because I realized I had the cassette, but I didn't have a download, so I was like, can you please send me Slip? Like I was like, I really want to play Slip, and he was like, oh my God, I haven't even thought about that in years. He's like, oh, let me see if I can find it, and he found it. But like the Etchings, Super Goner.
Oh man.
There were just so many people at the time that are still doing it. A lot of people are still doing it, just in different ways. But it was a real memory jog to be like, oh my God, I forgot about like who was really active at that point,
So that's kind of your throwback show. What is the format of the show you run now? I should say it's on WBFO, and that on the dial is?
So it's 88.7 FM HD2 for now. But I think by the time you air this, I'll be allowed to say this because it starts actually tomorrow. They are going to start simulcasting WBFO The Bridge at nights during the week on regular WBFO.
Oh, cool.
88.7 FM.
Yeah.
So that'll be from 8 p.m. to midnight, I think, nights during the week. And I don't know how much more I can speak about it, but I'm hopeful that there will be more showcase opportunities.
Wow, that's a whole new level of exposure, right?
It is. It's a huge new level of exposure. So
that's great. Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool. I don't want to, we'll talk off air more about details, but I'm very interested. So tell me about the format as it is now, Sunday mornings, 10 a.m.
Yep.
How do you were talking a little bit about playlists and flow. How do you build a show, from research to contacting the bands to, putting together the order and things like that? What's in your mind? Do you have overarching themes per Sunday on how you're trying to approach things, or is it a little loose? I know you said release schedules can play a role.
Yeah,
stuff
for
like that.
sure. I mean, there are definitely artists who go out of their way to reach out to me weeks ahead of time and are like, hey, listen, I'm putting out an EP on this date. Would you be open to playing my song on X date? And if I can accommodate them, I'm happy to. So I'll mark that I have a planner. I still use a handwritten planner. And so I'll mark that in my little planner and be like, okay, like for example, Aklo, is releasing something, I think an EP this upcoming Friday, and so he wanted to be played on Sunday the 4th. So, okay, Aklo, Sunday the 4th. Or I go on Facebook events and I'll look up, what shows are coming up.
Yeah.
But I also incorporate Southern Ontario bands, which is
Right.
another very important element of the program. And I think it's been a little harder to hook them in because understandably, I don't think that they can necessarily reach the station all the time on the dial, depending on where they're located in Southern Ontario. So I spend a lot of my week going on Instagram, Spotify, and really just hopping around on profiles and trying to find contact information and getting in touch with artists from all over. I mean, a lot of those people are still in Western New York. Like, I've reached out to people in Rochester, in Buffalo. But there's been a lot of people I've reached out to in like Hamilton, Guelph, Mississauga, Toronto, and to get them to submit to the program because we need WAV files. I was asked this recently. They were like, why can't you just play it? We need the WAV file in
Right.
order to play it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I do during the week. And then I'm slowly kind of building the playlist. Usually like Monday to Tuesday, I'm building the playlist because I need to submit what the playlist will be by Wednesday morning.
Okay.
And as far as an overarching theme, not really like necessarily theme based unless I'm told like you said, like for 716 Day or for something, it's like, oh, we're going to do X theme. I just more try and make it as much as I can an even balance of Western New York, Southern Ontario artists. There's usually about 15 to 16 songs in the playlist. So if I can make it even, I try. But sometimes it's a little more heavy on one side or the other. Like we were saying earlier, I like to kind of start with a bang. I like something with a lot of energy in the beginning. And then kind of in the middle of the program, you can have a little bit more of a dip. I think of it almost like an album.
Yeah.
You know?
It's got a flow.
Exactly. Like there's like not like a narrative story. I'm not going to be that pretentious, but just kind of, like you were saying, a flow, like something for a listener. At least I know what I like as a listener. Like I like something that really catches my attention at first. And then once I'm sort of into it and I'm then along with it, where it's like, okay, I'm going to stick with this for the next hour.
Yeah.
Then you can kind of play with it a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
In your show, do you do any on-air interviews, or was that more of a past thing that you did?
So at this point, no. I'm hopeful that in the future there will be an interview component to the scene, but right now it's purely music.
Do you have any advice for artists? I know this isn't your current thing, but in the past you've interviewed many people. And sometimes there's a bit of nervousness that goes on in any interview, but for bands, I feel like there's this imperative to condense down your biography into this like a digestible soundbite, and do you have nightmare stories where people come on and they just can't talk about their project? Or do you have people that have come on and been just perfect, and what did they do right?
Well, I won't name names. I think what comes to me is not quite a nightmare, but I had somebody where I interviewed, and unfortunately, prior to the interview, in order to kind of get this person acclimated, we had a discussion. They ended up telling all their best stories during this discussion. So then once we got in the air, they were kind of choking.
Right.
So that was a learning experience where I was like, okay, so the key is you don't go into the whole story prior to being on air.
Yeah.
You get somebody acclimated, obviously, but you don't get all the good stuff before going on the air.
Right.
But, I think most people feel, I've had bands in the past, like we're saying, when I did the interviews, who would contact me ahead of time and really would want to know, like, well, what are you going to ask me?
Oh, yeah.
And I would usually say it's not going to be anything crazy. I always liked to look into the band specifically and get more information on them because I didn't want to ask generic questions. I really wanted it to be specific towards them.
Yeah.
And I liked some of their descriptions always cracked me up. I think it was it might have been the etchings. I remember they had some description that was like riding the wooden roller coaster at Darien Lake. It was some like really funny, goofy
Predator,
description.
I think that one.
Yeah, there's a family friend who broke a rib on that. So,
Oh my God.
Yeah, not good. But backing up. So yeah, like I loved to ask specific questions in that vein, but I also would ask people like, what do you want me to ask you? Are you trying to promote anything right now? Is there anything
Yeah.
you specifically want to be asked about? Because I think that makes for a more interesting interview. If the person's relaxed and comfortable and they know what they want to talk about, it makes it exponentially easier than if they're on edge and kind of rigid and they
Yeah.
don't know where to go.
Right, right. I guess this is all part of a bigger picture where artists are sort of forced to be their own content machine and sort of like their own marketing firm and their own PR manager. And it's like, you're competing with an algorithm a lot of the times. And so you actually recently commented on the toll that can take on an artist. And so I guess I'm wondering, do you have any insight on how an artist can have a healthy relationship with promoting themselves?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still figuring it out, to be honest. I feel like I really treat it as a job. I kind of have a plan as far as what my social media will be. I take into account the shows that are coming up. I take into account anything else that, like, for example, this podcast or any like other things that are happening. And I just sort of make a little calendar of, okay, well, this will be the day that this will be promoted. This will be the day that'll be promoted. And most of my feed is promotional. I mean, there are times when it's not purely promotional. I like to do behind the scenes things because I find I've always found those interesting when artists do them. And
Yeah.
I don't mean to flatter myself to think, but maybe other people find it interesting when, like I explain what's happening.
A look
like,
behind the scenes, behind
Yeah.
the process. I think that's actually really awesome for the audience to get a sense for the making of, because it comes out as a fully formed thing, and they're like, "Oh, this is fun." Wait, how did it come together? A lot of people perceive music as just a chunk, and they don't hear the individual pieces. So anytime you can show a little bit of what's happening, I think that's great.
Yeah, I think it's fun. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that in treating it as a job, I can separate myself from it a little more, where it's not, because I still deal with this to a degree and I'm trying to get it to calm down. But there was a point where if I didn't plan things like that, I'm just constantly in my mind, going over not just even the promotional stuff, but also like, okay, well, what shows still need to be booked? Like, where do we want to try to hit before the end of the year or whatever? It's like, and there's just so much that goes into being your own booker, PR person, like songwriter. I mean, the whole thing.
Yeah, not to forget the artist part.
Exactly.
It's like
that's what kind of, I think lately has really been wearing on me and why I'm trying to figure out a much healthier relationship with the business side of music, because I get so caught up in doing all this other stuff, like booking the shows and working the social media and getting in touch with people, that I don't have as much time for the creative part. And I kind of neglect it. And then I start to feel very pent up and anxious. And I'm like, what is going on? And then usually I end up writing a song.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's the answer. I mean, I just haven't been feeding that creative side.
Yeah, because the energy drain on an artist is huge. You spend a lot of energy making the thing, right? And then when it comes out, it's really tempting to do one post and be like, okay, I'm done. Because the energy you expended to make it is the same exact amount you need to put into promoting it. And it's like, oh my God, I have to start this whole machine over again.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I can. And I think that's why a lot of business-oriented people aren't creative, and a lot of creative people aren't business-oriented. And so, like, sometimes these partnerships seem like they can really help, oh yeah, pay this firm to send it out to labels. And other times I hear that just goes nowhere almost, from most of the experience I've heard, that stuff hasn't worked out. So you're left in between thinking like, how can I come up with something that seems interesting? I feel like the behind the scenes thing is a really good idea for people to keep that in their back pocket. But yeah, it's just tough to push after you've pushed hard to get it done, to get it made.
It's tough to push, but something that I read once and it was like, yeah, that's true. And if it helps anybody else out there, I mean, no one's going to promote you but you. You know what I mean? It's like, so you take that on, and if somebody else finds it obnoxious, they can unfollow you. I mean, at the end of the day, like, who else is going to do it for you? Yeah, you can hire somebody, but also, if you hire somebody, you run the risk of, do they really feel as passionate about your music and your project as you do?
Yeah.
Maybe
Or
not. I
are
mean,
they expressing it the same way you would, you know?
exactly. Like they're just getting a check and that makes them happy. And some of these promotion companies, I'm not saying that they're all dogs. I mean, I'm sure there are people who are actually doing good work, but like some of them I think cost a lot of money and then they're really not doing that much.
Yeah, or the return, you don't see it as clearly. Maybe they're trying behind the scenes, but yeah, what does it look like to be successful in 2024 it's a really weird question.
Yeah, exactly. So I just kind of feel like, at least for me personally, I've kind of gone on a whole journey of feeling more comfortable with it and recognizing that, like, okay, I mean, I'm doing this because who else is going to do it for me?
Yeah.
And I try and be tasteful about it. I really do. I mean, but at the end of the day, also, it's self-promotion. So it's like you kind of have to be a little bit pushy to a degree as far as like,
Yeah.
and I don't know if you've read the book, The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer.
I haven't, no.
Amanda Palmer of Dresden Dolls. It probably came out about 10 years ago, but the point of that entire book is like, don't be afraid to ask people for help or to do things. And I think it just made me feel a little more confident about being direct as far as like, hey, please listen to this thing, instead of it kind of being like, oh, this thing is out there, but I don't know, do what you want with it. Like, you don't have to listen. It's like,
yeah,
no,
almost
it's
apologizing as you're like asking.
Right.
That kind of goes one step forward, one step back.
exactly. But it's like, if you're proud of it, I mean, just say to people, it's like, hey, it would mean the world if you listen to this.
Yeah.
And if they don't, they don't. And that's fine. It's like, not everyone has to like what you do and not everyone has to do what you ask. But it's like, if you're asking, that's all you can
You
do.
got a shot, yeah. Do you have a strategy for your ask? Because some people will say like, okay, I just talked to John Toohill and he was like, okay, here's the plan. You got to have your single out a month before your second single, a month before the physical. Like he has this whole timeline to putting things out.
Yeah.
Do you have any sort of like go-to strategy for how you release a thing?
Well, so for this latest record, I'm working with an indie label. And so I was very much kind of at their decision making as far as like how often the singles were going to come out.
Yeah.
So the first single actually came out in June of 2023. And I think it was like not until October maybe that the second single came out. And at the time I felt like that seemed like a really long wait. Ultimately, in a weird way, it almost kind of worked out. It was like months pass quicker than you think they will, and really summers are busy for people anyway, and I was kind of actually relieved to not having to be pushed a lot in the summer. I don't know, I felt like the fall kind of made a little more sense, especially for the song. It was actually Ghostwriter, which you worked on the music video
Yeah.
for, and I felt like that song was a really good fall fit.
Yeah.
But yeah, typically in the past, I kind of always thought of it as like, okay, like John was saying, it's like, okay, we're going to maybe wait like a month between a single release. Or really what I typically would do, because I'm, a child of the late 90s, early 2000s, I thought like, oh yeah, like a single and then you just release the record, or the release, the EP, whatever. But with this latest album, I mean, it is the longest thing I've ever put out. It's 10 songs, technically 11 if you include the cover that was done. So it made more sense to kind of release them one at a time and treat them as a waterfall is what they call it. So it's like you release a song, the next song you release is put above that song so people stream that one, and then the next one is streamed whatever. So I think that's become very popular now to do, especially on Spotify.
Definitely. I have seen that. I have seen that approach. Everyone's got their own take on it. Oh, you got to do it this way. You got to post on Mondays at 10:47 a.m. It's like, I guess it all depends on when your audience is available and looking into the metrics that you can see and sort of playing off that. But yeah, I like to ask the question because whatever I can absorb from other people, I'm going to take that and see, can I make this work?
I will say sometimes I'll think I have it figured out as far as when to post. And then a post will be a total dud. And I'm like, okay, well, never mind. Or it's like, or you post on like, I've posted before where it's like, okay, like Friday night at like 7. And depending on the content of what you're posting, suddenly that thing gets all this attention.
Yeah.
And you're thinking like, oh, I didn't think anyone would see that. But they do. It's weird. It's a crapshoot.
It's a
some of the time.
crapshoot. That's
Yeah.
a good word for it. Okay, you ready? We're going to take a little turn. We're going to do our own version of a local show right here
Oh, man.
on ZUZU Radio.
Okay.
Before you arrived, I asked you to consider 3 local songs that you were really into lately, and I have 3 local songs that I'm really into lately, and I
Oh.
thought we could kind of trade off,
Okay.
play a little bit on the show, and talk about if you don't know them, this will be like, yeah, here, put this on your show, Chelsea.
Cool.
And if I don't know them, I'll be like, yes, I'm going to book this band.
Okay. All right.
So I'm going to go first, okay?
Okay.
There is a band that's been on my radar since I think last year. Some people know I'm like kind of a freak for the Bandcamp local tags. I dig real deep, see what the new arrivals in Buffalo are. And this band, Listening Box, came across my radar. Have you heard of them?
No.
Okay. They have a song called Ticking, and it's off Bliss Recall. So let me give you a little bit here.
Here it comes, a storm of a proportion never seen. Who knows? Oh, what a world with nobody could be. Oh, when can I knock on your door in Aberdeen? Did you say somebody could be forever clean? Clocks are ticking, engines running down. Clocks are ticking, engines running down. Clocks are ticking, engines running. Clocks are ticking. Here it comes, a reckoning that we might all deserve. Who knows? Oh, how to find which documents to burn. Oh, when you leave your body naked in the lurch, did you think twice about what lesson was to learn? Clocks are ticking, engines running down. Clocks are ticking, engines running down. Clocks are ticking.
I feel like I should do a Chelsea here. And that was Listening Box with Ticking off of Bliss Recall. Was that good?
That was perfect.
Yeah, I found those guys and I heard that song, and from the minute it played, I was like, oh, there's something here. There's a dreamy quality to it. It's got progression that just has some interesting, I don't know if there's suspensions or whatever in it, and I was just drawn in immediately. And this is something you have not heard before.
I have
right?
never heard it, no.
What was your take? How'd you feel?
I liked it. I thought actually what's funny is I feel like it goes really well into my first recommendation.
Is that
for you?
We're building a playlist right now?
Yeah, we are. Just the vibe and the instrumental to me. I'm like, oh, this actually is a nice little segue to what I was going to recommend. But yeah, no, that's awesome, and a perfect example of how there are so many artists right here in Buffalo that I have never freaking heard of. And so I'm
know,
actually
so
really
many.
happy when somebody recommends, because like we said earlier, I do a lot of my own digging, but there's definitely stuff I'm missing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm happy that you're showing me this
There's a
music.
lot of artists out there that aren't comfortable promoting themselves, and so if someone like you or I finds them and can kind of lift them up, maybe it's that moment like it was for you in high school. Keep going back to that, because it's like those are the moments that change your life. You know, when someone is able to show you your potential. You know?
Oh, yeah.
It's a big thing. Okay, Chelsea, what do you got for me? What's your first pick here?
My first pick is a song that was aired on last week's program. I had never heard of this artist before. Pete Benson,
Yeah.
Rain Cloud Number 1. I've listened to this song at least 10 times or more over the past week and a half, and I just really love it. I think it's great.
what exists. Reality itself is gorgeous. It is the plenum, the fullness of total joy. Wow-wee. And all those stars, if you look out in the sky, is a firework display like you see on the 4th of July, which is a great occasion for celebration. The universe is a celebration. It's a firework show to celebrate that existence is. Wow-wee.
That was Pete Benson with Rain Cloud number 1.
Yes, and that's from Monumental Sun, which is out pretty recently, right? Within the past couple weeks?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, excellent stuff. It's really cool how a subtle beat inflection can change your whole perspective on a song where, we were talking about sort of the build-up beat. There's that double clap thing that happens. There's a switch between double time and cut time that happens in the song that's really nice. Very dreamy stuff. Yeah, this is super fun. Cool. Okay.
What do you got, Bran?
Let me give you my second pick here. Let's see. This is a band called The Color Waves. Do you know them?
See, and once again, nope, don't know.
Yeah, another one that came across my radar just from my best of list of last year or the year before, I think. I have been in touch with these guys a little bit here and there, trying to see are they playing shows or not, when can I get out to see them. But I think that you might enjoy this one, sort of an indie flavor, kind of a little bit of a Mac DeMarco sort of vibe to it. That was the Color Waves with Better Angels off of a split single they have out now. And yeah, Sam Evian is another guy that comes to mind. Just feels like summertime in a way to me. Yeah, and I love the warbly sounds in there.
It's that very surf rock kind of sound.
Yes.
And then it's funny because I think surf rock and then I'm like, am I only thinking of this band because of the term surf? But do you know Not a Surf?
Of course.
Somehow
yeah.
that kind of reminds me a little bit of that one Not a Surf record. I can't remember the name of the record, but oh, that's going to drive me nuts. There's a song on it that's pretty popular. It's like one of their more popular songs.
Is it called Let Go? There's Blizzard of 77, which is, that's the name of a song on one of their albums, and I think that album is called Let Go.
That might be it.
But yeah, I could totally see that. I just love, the imagery to me is like you're at the beach, and that's a good feeling for summertime.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, what's your next pick?
Speaking of the beach,
Man, we are on it right now.
yes. So I've told you before that one of my favorite shows of all time is The OC.
Yes, you have.
Right?
You've
Okay.
mentioned that.
So The OC has a fabulous soundtrack. So great. So this next artist, the whole reason I'm bringing that up is because the first time I heard this song, I'm like, this could have been on the OC soundtrack, like no questions asked. And it just had that total vibe for me. It's TV Mountain, but it's stylized TVMTM. And the song is I'm Your Reverb.
Hold out if you can. Hold out for the real thing. Because I crash you on TV. You are an orchestra crash. You're a broken harmonica blast. You're an electronic clap. I'm your reverb waving back. But if you still disintegrate, I'll keep the drum beat rolling if I can. Oh, at least until the echoes take our place. If there's no sound when the lights go down, just keep your speakers moving till your luck runs out. Your jewel case melting in the backseat sun. You're a missing verse that follows me around. But if you still disintegrate, I'll keep the drum beat rolling if I can. At least until the echoes take our place.
TV Mountain with I'm Your Reverb here on ZUZU Radio.
Yes, you got it. Yeah, so TV Mountain is done by the guys who run Harvest Sum Recordings.
Okay, gotcha.
And yeah, and they've done, I think of them in some ways as like what I wanted to be. When I was starting, I saw them and was like, wow, everything they produce is very slick and cool sounding. And like they've been going for a very long time and done a lot of work in the community. And I believe the lead singer of this band is the guy who runs Harvest Sum.
Okay, gotcha.
Pretty sure.
Yeah, I was wondering what the connection was because I knew there was one, but I
Yeah.
wasn't very clear. So thank you for clarifying. for me.
Sure, I'm still a little blurry on some of the details, and I'd love to know more about. We were just talking during the song about if they're playing or if there are plans for anything like that, because it'd be really great to see them play live.
Well, they submitted this not like within the last year, so I would assume that means that they're somewhat active. I don't know.
It's weird when
But-
there's so many projects now, and I'm definitely guilty of this for sure, where it's like it only lives in the studio, and you're putting stuff out and you're promoting it, and people start to like it, and then they're like, "When's the show?" And you're like, "Oh, I didn't didn't really imagine it going that way."
Yeah.
But maybe it's always nice to have a live version for people who really enjoy it.
Yeah, we have that with my side project, Urge Surfer. We had no plans to ever make it a live thing, but people have asked, which is very flattering. So we're like, eventually, we hope to get there.
Yeah.
But it's very much a studio-based project. So.
But you are planning that in the future it's going to happen?
We're hoping. It's just kind of a matter of figuring out, with Jordan, really a lot of those ideas come and they are a one-time only experiment. And so to replicate that live, that's the challenge, is
Yeah.
figuring out how to make those sounds in a live setting that isn't just playing a track. And not that there's shame necessarily in just playing a track, but I think that it would make us both feel more into it if there was a way to make it where it's like a real experience musically.
Yeah. And if you're doing studio work where, one or two people are filling out the sound, then you have to sort of draft in other players that don't have a creative like buy-in. They're kind of just learning and then playing, and sometimes that can feel a little awkward too. So I get you there. Yeah, a lot of times studio projects that start like that and draft people in, they become like a different iteration of the band as the other people start to contribute creatively, and that can be fun too. Okay, here's my final pick for you.
Okay.
This is by a guy named Pute, I think is how you say it.
Pute. Okay.
P-U-T-E. It's called The Nothing, featuring Guilty Simpson.
This track is me, meaning average. I never felt the need to put my full potential into super ladders. A reality of full-blown madness, where grown folks pack the hyperbole pipe tight and actors. They got it figured out with 4 years of public school mathematics. The simulation savage. We integrated at a young age, some to either make it or be taken by the sun rays, and praised by the abbot for the suffering, scintillating your habits by which produce fuckery. Never easy to let go, so you stuck with me. There ain't no meaning, no truth to covet the cacophony. Just an X to the eyes and specs for the lies. Penny for your thoughts, but your thoughts don't surmise. Just watch the sunrise repetitive. Watch your sunrise competitive. The flow attract the beam, attract the fiend like a sackless scheme. Y'all act like rappers magic, got a sack of beans. Y'all can suck on my Bozak. Word to the sermon in the cut and you knows that.
Got the shit.
You can only have one. To have one is to have two. A glimpse into the snafu. Does the world know you're here? You can only have one. To have one is to have two. A glimpse into the snafu. Does the world know you're here?
Chill.
I lay in the darkness looking at nothingness, but I saw it, and it was beautiful, and it tore it with the strings of my heart as though a symphony. All of this beauty came from nothing. All of this beauty came from nothingness.
My sound waves make the house shake. Clean, I avoided the outbreak. What is life without faith? The body pays for the mouth steaks. Raw, uncut, no outtake. Hear me out. They saying my name, wearing it out. The price you pay is paramount when you're following the cookie cutter pattern of what matters. Rerunning what's happening. Clear it out. The rap game's bottlenecking. Some should be without a record. Talk fast, I only got a second. Mad that they got rejected. Can you blame them? I could hear 100 different rappers and couldn't name them. So we hit them with a different angle. Not blowing the same old smoke. My life's on the line, so I can't go broke. So when they say no dough, I'ma say no go. Guilty.
You can only have one. To have one is to have two. A glimpse into the snafu. Does the world know you're here? You can only have one. To have one is to have two. A glimpse into the snafu. Does the world know you're here?
All of this beauty came.
That was Pute with The Nothing featuring Guilty Simpson. And for me, there's something about sound collage type songs where the aesthetic of the beat starts off and then something else joins it that just seems like it's not wrong, but it's like I wouldn't have picked this to fit so well, and I like when I anticipate something and I'm proven wrong. That's like the best thing for me in music, and especially when this guy's voice comes in. It's so low and rich and it's like flowing in a very silky way.
Yeah.
Man, it just hits all the right notes for me.
Very cool. I enjoyed it a lot. Like I said to you while we were talking, I'm like, thank you for showing me these these artists. And I've mentioned this before. Actually, I was on the 716 The Sound, which I know you were on as well with Chris.
Oh, I love Chris.
And yeah, Chris is great. And I was saying how like I just said to you, there are so many artists that I'll come across and they have no way listed to contact them. And that's why I'm actually relieved about Bandcamp, because there is a contact form automatically built into everyone's Bandcamp page that inevitably usually leads to an email address, which is great. Because I try to explain to people, it's the DM thing, DMs get lost, like they're not always reliable. And a lot of times too, if I get a wave file through my phone, like I'm not able to really download it correctly, whatever. So just email is always kind of my preferred form of communication. Maybe that makes me sound old. I don't know. But I'm relieved when I find artists with email addresses, because it just makes the whole process much easier as far as like trying to obtain the recordings.
Yeah. So make sure you put your email address out there.
Yes, please. That's what I'm begging all artists, if you hear this, just make it accessible somewhere. I guess some people say that if they put it in their Instagram bio, they feel like bots get a hold of it or something. But
maybe,
I don't know, if there's a way to put it somewhere, just, that would be great. But
yeah, thank God for Bandcamp, definitely. And I was saying off air too that in the summer, it seems like this summer in particular, I don't know if you're getting the sense that there's a rebound happening from the pandemic. I mean, I don't know how long the pandemic was, 1.5 years, 2 years or something.
Yeah.
And then the hangover after, and now it seems like people are waking up creatively again, or the ambition to do something is there again. And so we were talking, and I was saying I found a lot of this just in the past couple of weeks of digging through and just seeing so much good stuff coming out. So it's out there. Okay, Chelsea, give me your last one. What do you got? Okay,
I got to tell you, it was very difficult for me to make a third and final decision, because there's a lot that I like a lot. But I'm going to go to that. As a songwriter, I've grown now to appreciate so many different forms of how a song can sound, right? But if we're going back to like what really used to fulfill me, it's like a very traditional song structure, right? Like verse, chorus, whatever. And I think somebody who does that really well in the kind of punkier scene is Sydney Flanagan of Starjuice.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a song called Hands Wrists that it's just a fabulous song. It's so good. So I'm going to go with that for my final pick.
Let's do it.
You hold my hands instead of my wrists. Release of tension, unclench my fists. I never knew that it could be like this. I can get used to this. The imagery I knew with you was so violent. Programmed at youth to be subordinate. Now we are here, and the white noise is clear.
Star Juice with Hans Riss. And they are also fabulous live. They're like so good. I know I said fabulous twice. I don't care. They deserve it. They're great. They are great. Yeah.
I've never had the chance to see them live, but I've always appreciated their music from afar. And this song's no different. I like right out the gate the imagery of "You hold my hand instead of my wrist." Like just that line brings to mind so much.
It's very powerful.
Yeah, and I could see you guys on tour together. Like your sounds feel very complimentary.
We've played shows together, and I hope we continue to play more shows together in the future because they're great.
Oh, that chorus hits really hard. And Sydney is an incredible actor. Mm-hmm. I always get the title wrong of the movie. Do you know? Never,
rarely, sometimes, always.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Man, that's an incredible film.
That was a really, once again, powerful. It was a very powerful film.
Yeah, definitely.
Very heavy, but something that is important.
Yeah. And Sydney's performance is just like, whoa, out of this world, super good. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that's our local show. But let's take a quick peek into the future for Chelsea O.
Sure.
Do you have a vision for what's coming next? Is there something that maybe you've got your eye on that you haven't done that you want to do? What's it look like?
It's a great question. As far as my professional life with radio, I'm still so excited about the bridge and all of its potential and where it could go. And I'm hopeful that in the next year, we're going to see growth, not only just like in the community and getting them involved, but also things that we're able to do for the artists regionally. And like I mentioned, I mean, I think it would be fabulous if we could have like an interview portion maybe to the scene, or like maybe more showcases at the tiny stage that's within the WBFO building and inviting the community to go see those shows. And I think that there's so many ideas swirling around, and a lot of them are really great. It's just a matter of actually putting them into action. And sometimes those things take longer than you'd hope, but that doesn't mean that they won't happen. Yeah. So there's a lot that I'm excited about there. And as far as music, I'm writing all the time, and I have probably around at least 30 to 40 songs that I'm sifting through, trying to figure out what's best for the next Stress Styles release and what's even going to happen with that next release. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, so that's what I'm kind of in the midst of at the moment, creatively.
In terms of not knowing if you'll work with the label again for the next one, or how you're going to put it out, you mean?
Yeah, just kind of, it's a mystery moment right now. You know, I'm still with the label, but you never know what the future's going to hold.
Right, definitely.
So, one day at a time, we'll see.
One day at a time. I think that's a good place to leave it. This has been a conversation about promoting artists between two artists. And I think people who operate in service of the scene and also participate in it are sort of in a unique position to be a hub, you know, a person that can help people cross over and create collaboration amongst the scene. And so thank you for everything you do to shine a light on the talented, hardworking people that are around here. And, you know, it's always a pleasure talking with you, Chelsea. Thank you for coming on.
Well, thanks, Brandon. Also, I want to add thanks for everything you do, because you've been a part of my whole musical story since like almost day one being in this Buffalo music scene. It's true. You know, the first EP I ever worked on really like outside of, I don't know, like with Wolf was with you. So
yeah,
and
we
that
go
was a
way
big,
back.
And it was a big introduction to like this whole music community. You know, like being around you, knowing what music you were listening to, being involved with the people that you were around. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you. You're the best, Chelsea. Thank you.